Welcome to the Roost News Podcast, All Things Volunteer. I am Judy Baroni, co-lead of the Roost News team. Our guests today are Jessica Prell, AARP Advisor, Fraud Prevention Programs, and AARP Virginia State President Joyce Williams, who will discuss using the Sprout Social Advocacy app to share fraud prevention stories on social media. Welcome, Jessica and Joyce.
Great. Thanks for having
Before,
us.
oh, definitely. So before we start, why don't you please introduce yourselves and how you started with AARP and progressed into your current positions? Jessica, why don't you go first?
Sure. So I actually was introduced to AARP through an internship. I had completed my military service and was pursuing a degree in social work with a concentration in health, aging, and disability. And I came across a great opportunity to intern with AARP Wisconsin. I've always loved to work with older adults, and after being introduced to AARP, I was definitely hooked. So after my internship concluded, I was lucky enough to stay on board as a temp worker for a little while and as a volunteer, and then eventually returned to the organization full-time about 12 years ago. And since then, I've held a few roles both at the state and national office, and currently am on the fraud prevention team.
Excellent. And Joyce?
Well, my professional career was as an educator, and I spent 35 years in the classroom and as administrator for Roanoke County Schools here in Virginia. I was attending a Virginia Retired Teacher Association some years ago, and ran into our keynote speaker, Brian Jacks, who's an associate state director here in Virginia for AARP for Southwest Virginia. And he indicated to me that he was thinking about putting together a volunteer team here in Southwest Virginia. And he asked me if I might have any interest in doing that. Well, at the time, I had stopped. After I had retired, I worked with the Masters in Arts of Teaching for Hollins University here locally. I supervised student teachers for Longwood University and for James Madison University here in Virginia. And I had decided it was too much work for too little money. So when he told me that he was putting together this volunteer team in Southwest Virginia and asked me if I wanted to be a part of it, I thought, well, something to do. So anyway, I became a volunteer here in Southwest Virginia on his volunteer team, and that was probably close to 15 years ago. And served as a community outreach ambassador for a bunch of years, 10 or so. And I became infatuated with AARP. I saw parallels between Ethel Percy Andrus and the fact that she was an educator and she spent her professional career devoted to young people, and now as or then as a retired person, she devoted her efforts to working on behalf of older Americans. So I kind of saw a parallel there, and it enticed me to do more and more and more. And the more I learned about AARP, and there's so much about AARP to know, the more I wanted to do. And so my husband passed away in early 2020, just before the pandemic began, and in May after that, creating a hole in my life, if you can imagine. And in May after that, Jim Dow, our state director, approached me and asked me if I'd be interested in being state president. And in many ways, it was a lifesaver. So that's how I became state president. And as I have spent the last 14 or 15 years with AARP, I've learned more and more about it. And felt a little bit frustrated in how to get the word out. So when this idea of Sprout Social came along, it just seemed like a perfect answer. So that's how I got here.
Excellent. Both of you. Excellent. Interesting information. So Jessica, why don't you start? Explain a little bit what the Sprout Social app is and how you share the fraud prevention stories.
Yeah, absolutely. So our digital fraud fighter program actually began several years ago. However, just this past January, we refreshed the program with the new digital tools that help us easily disseminate information and raise awareness on the latest scams. And this new tool is called Sprout Social, which is basically a social media management tool that allows volunteers to share timely and relevant information across their social networks with the click of a button. So right now, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, so formerly Twitter, and Instagram are all different social media platforms that are connected through Sprout Social. We have a great team of writers here at AARP, and as Joyce was alluding to, we're looking for ways to help get that information in front of people, and using social media just made sense. Meeting people where they're at with this information. Volunteers love it. I don't want to speak for Joyce, but the feedback we've received is it's just so easy. Literally with kind of a point-click share, volunteers can easily customize the message if they wish that we've put in there as an example, and then share it out across their social networks with their family and friends to help make them aware of the latest scams happening. And what I really love and appreciate about Sprout Social that we didn't have before is it allows us to track the impact that we've been able to make. So we launched this program, as I said, back in January of this year, so less than 10 months ago. And to date, I just looked up these stats this morning. We have attracted over 215 volunteers who collectively help amplify stories, resulting in a potential reach of nearly 1.5 million people. So that's really huge and significant when you think that potentially most of those people we wouldn't be able to reach without this platform and volunteers using it in this way. So really proud of that, especially when you consider that research shows that if you know about a specific scam, you're 80% less likely to engage with it. And if you do engage, you're 40% less likely to lose money. So getting the word out is really important. And we are just so happy to be able to use this platform and volunteers like Joyce.
Excellent. So for those people who are unfamiliar with the app itself, could you kind of give us an idea of how someone becomes a volunteer, kind of what the app looks like and how you share the stories?
Yep. So if you're interested in becoming a volunteer, there's a website, aarp.org/digital fraud fighter, that you use. You fill out a quick form to get started. Within 24 hours, my colleagues with the Office of Volunteer Engagement will send you an email. And that email includes a quick overview video that's pre-recorded you can watch on your own time, that provides an overview of this program. There's a short video on how to use the Sprout Social platform. And from there, you set up an account. And every other week, I try to go into the platform. I add news stories. We, again, have that great team of writers who are always putting out new information about the latest scams and ways you can protect yourself. So try to upload those in a timely fashion into the platform. There's some sample messaging you can use or customize if you wish. And you literally, it's connected with your social network. So with the click of a button, you can share it. So it's that simple. And I think there's great benefit for this for people who are new to the organization, because for a lot of them, it's the first time they're getting involved with AARP. It's kind of a low threshold, easy digital volunteer experience that they can do. And we're seeing a lot of people, once they've had that kind of introduction, love what we're doing with fraud, know the importance of it, and are looking for opportunities with the state office to get more involved. So we love to see that track.
So before the app, was the only, or I should ask you, what was the only way of spreading the word about fraud? Was it like word of mouth, or how did you do it?
Yeah, so the program had sat vacant for a couple of years while the position that I came into about a year ago was left unfulfilled. But my predecessor had built a team of digital fraud fighters who were highly engaged individuals. A lot of them brought expertise from their own fields working on fraud, but we didn't have a way to actively communicate with them. And so I know, for example, there was a Facebook page for digital fraud fighters where we try to share information and resources. However, a lot of volunteers weren't on Facebook. for various reasons. And so that was really limiting for us. So this Sprout social platform has just made it so much easier. And again, I think beyond Facebook, getting the message out there, LinkedIn is a huge one for us because so many of our volunteers are career professionals, to help spread that awareness.
Excellent. Now, Joyce, how do you use the Sprout Social app specific to your state of Virginia?
Well, if you'll indulge me, may I do a little
Sure,
bit of a backstory here?
sure.
Um, First, let me say that I I will echo everything Jessica says about how easy it is. When somebody asks me though what I do as a state president and what my job is, I
Hmm.
say I'm a cheerleader. And Sprout Social is something I am especially a cheerleader for
Hmm.
because it is so easy and because it fills a need. And let me explain what I mean about that.
Sure.
Um, Soon after I got the role, I assumed the role of AARP Virginia State President. Um, we had like a nationwide meeting of state presidents, and there are 53 of us, 50 for the states and DC and 50 for the states, and then DC and Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. So and we were issued a challenge to create a 2-minute elevator speech about AARP. And, when people think about AARP, they think about discounts and insurance. And there's so much more. So I tried to pack into that 2 minutes everything I could think of about AARP. And there was just so much that I thought, gosh, that's just a waste because it was like, blah, 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 and that's, and then the 2 minutes was over. But when Sprout Social came along, it occurred to me that these little snippets of information, these articles that are curated by people that know what's happening and know what's going on, if we can share these one at a time to the public, instead of trying to pack everything about AARP into 2 minutes in an elevator or wherever, that would be an awesome way to help people understand all there is about AARP. And one of the most vital things, of course, that we do is fighting fraud. And so when the opportunity became available, and there are some other platforms too that I hope we can mention before we close this out. But when the digital fraud fighting opportunity came along, it seemed to me that was an absolute perfect fit because we do speaking engagements about fraud, and we get the word out that way. But we may speak to a group only once every year or 8 months or whatever, and there's a lot that happens in fighting fraud, in perpetrators of fraud during that time. And so this opportunity provides us with a vehicle that we can get things out as they happen. And so I don't know that here in Virginia, I do anything any differently than anybody else does in any of the other states. But the fact of the matter is, it's just such a perfect fit for what we want to have happen
Hmm.
that it's just ideal as a means of getting the word out. Now, I primarily use LinkedIn and Facebook. Those are the two vehicles that I feel most comfortable. But it's so gratifying and so satisfying to get information back about how far our postings go, that it's just an awesome opportunity. And I can't encourage people enough to do it because, as Jessica's already said, it's so easy. The most of the time that it takes is to read, and if you don't want to read the whole article, frankly, you can skim it and get the gist of it and know how valuable it's going to be for those other people out there to get. So if I haven't answered your question very well, I appreciate the opportunity to
You've
at least
answered it
share,
well, quite
to
well.
at least share. the value I place on it personally.
One question for both of you. I know as we mentioned before we started talking, I am a fraud fighter. I've been one for about 4 years now, and I do use Sprout Social. But one thing I look at, and this is just me, is that leaderboard. So I like to know where I'm in, how much I'm participating, if you want to say. Do you ever come across that where some of your Virginia people or the other fraud fighters, like they start getting a little competitive, which might be good in a situation like this?
Well, I haven't seen other Virginia names on there yet,
Okay.
but I'm continuing to be encouraging and model as much as I can the opportunities available. But I'm hoping more and more will join as they see things like this and see others encouraging them as well. But yeah, there's a little not just a little competition within the state, but sometimes there's a little competition with people I know in other
Right.
areas.
There might be somebody else associated with the Roost News team who is also one of those Sprouts or social people. So I kind of check her stats versus mine. So I like to go, she's ahead of me today. That's not good.
It's
Um,
fun.
it is fun. It is. And like I said, the competitiveness can kind of be good because everybody wants to get their stories out and see how well they do. Um, Before we conclude, is there anything else I haven't asked either one of you that you want to be sure to mention? Please do.
Really informative way to keep up to date on the latest information and resources that AARP is sharing about fraud and the latest scams. So again, I would just encourage everybody to check it out. You can go to aarp.org/digital fraud fighter for more information and to get started.
Great. Joyce, do you have anything else you want to mention?
Well, yeah, I would say that anybody, we have lots of people who are interested in wanting to help fight fraud, but they don't
Mhm.
always feel comfortable speaking to groups. And this is a thing
Right.
where they don't have to leave home. They can do it while they're waiting on their dinner to arrive at a restaurant, since we see phones in people's hands all the time.
Right.
Let's put it to good use. Um, the other thing is that not, uh, other some people might have different passions. And so I at least want everybody to know that there are at least 3 other platforms where there are opportunities, and some of us are involved on all 4. So
Right.
um, advocacy being one, very, very important in getting our message out. The Veterans Brigade being another. AARP is such a good vehicle for helping veterans and getting information out about veterans' needs and veterans' opportunities and veterans' help. Of course, Digital Fraud Fighter. And then the very newest one, which is only a month or so old now, is that of caregiving.
Oh, yes.
It's called
Mhm.
Care to Share. And I think I registered for that just a month ago on September the 16th. So that one's kind of brand new. But there are opportunities everywhere for us. And Sprout Social is just such an easy one. Just so easy. Just try it. And then if you don't like it, don't do it. But at least try. It's it's very rewarding.
Well, thank you both. I appreciate your time with us and sharing all this great information to our audience. And thank you to our audience who is watching this on YouTube or listening. on their audio player. So we encourage all of you to subscribe to our Roost News podcast channel on YouTube and or listen to the audio version on your favorite platform. And of course, please invite your colleagues to join us too. On behalf of the Roost News podcast team, we thank you.
Thank you.